Welcome, listeners of the Perspective series, to another great addition to some of the most informative conversations revolving around soft skill development. As always, these series are moderated by myself, Garrett Fisher, and brought to your office, living room, or wherever else you may be listening by the TAPI Young Professional Division. Today, we're going to expand our soft skill conversations and include a discussion of several topics revolving around navigating your career as a young professional. Let's not wait any longer. Let's get down to business. Like usual, I like to review that the purpose of this series is to focus on the need to develop skills deemed as soft in the workplace early on in your career. This is done through the use of casual conversations with groundbreaking individuals within the paper and allied industries, regardless of age. In addition to this soft skill development, we also attempt to zoom outwards and view our entire career as a journey. With that view, we can better ask ourselves what habits, hobbies, and opportunities could I invest time in now that will pay dividends later in life? A career stock market, as you might say. It is the hope of the Young Professional Division that these conversations put the pieces of the puzzle together with regards to your career, wherever you might be in it, such that investments of your time can be made wisely and with great confidence. I now have the greatest honor to introduce a new speaker to the Perspectives family. He is a man that is never satisfied with the status quo, and his constant fire has led him to being a revolutionary figure within the paper industry for the better part of 3 decades. To top it all off, we get to welcome him on his birthday of all days. I promised him he doesn't have to reveal what number birthday this is for him, nor will I torment him with a happy birthday song, as I have very horrible pitch. So without further ado, welcome Larry Ankers.
So hi, Gary. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you this afternoon.
It's a great pleasure, Larry. Larry currently works as the Director of Commercial Operations at Solenis in Sparta, New Jersey. As you might have guessed from his introduction as an overachiever, his work at Solenis is just a really small part of what he contributes to the paper industry. He also spent many years in leadership positions within the TAPI Paper and Board Division, as well as the Additives Committee. His work in the paper industry has led to multiple publications, culminating in the honor of TAPI Fellow being bestowed on him in 2013. However, what you might not have guessed is the man that is sitting on this call with me is actually a 3-time high school state wrestling champion, which was a passion he continued to pursue during his undergraduate degree. You might ask, only 3 championships? What happened to 4? High school's 4 years. Well, I'll let Larry answer that question.
What? You want me to tell everybody I broke my wrist in 2 spots and had to sit out states my senior year? Yeah, it wasn't much fun.
The fact that that's the only thing that limited you to having 4 really states to that fire that we already referenced, Larry.
Well, who knows what would have happened, but I didn't even get a chance to try.
So, Larry, my first several questions revolve around the fog that surrounds the start of the journey for so many young professionals once they reach the end of their undergraduate work. You mentioned to me in the past that during your PhD work, you found yourself really going in the opposite direction of many of your classmates when it came to jobs after college. While they all left for the big pharmaceutical jobs, you chose to jump headfirst into the fog that was the paper industry with a chemistry degree. With that being said, what factors about the paper industry helped you clear the fog, make that final decision coming out of school?
Yeah, well, I had the very good fortune of working for Betts Paper Chem, or Betts Laboratories, I guess it was at the time, during my graduate studies at Penn State. I took kind of a 1-year pause, and I had the opportunity to go work, on the specialty chemical side of supporting industries and solving problems for them and contributing to their, operational efficiency. And I found that challenge just very rewarding. So I had a sense that that's something I enjoyed doing. And when it came time to start interviewing after I scheduled my thesis defense, International Paper happened to be coming to State College to interview for grad students. And so had the opportunity to interview with Dennis Kalberg from IP's Erie Research Center and we hit it off. He's a great person, became one of my dear friends and mentors, and but he gave me the opportunity to work maybe a third of the time, at my desk, a third of the time in a pilot plant or at the lab bench, and then a third of the time kind of out in the field solving problems. And I knew from that time at Betts that that was a great fit for me. So you're right. Most of my classmates went to places like Bristol Myers Squibb or Merck uh, to kind of pursue their careers. But I knew this was something I wanted to try, and it turned out to be a great fit for me. The folks at the Erie Research Center became like a family, and the job was everything I hoped it would be. And it just launched the career that I'm still enjoying today.
Yeah, I think you really point out the family and the diversity part of the paper industry. That family atmosphere is something we've heard all the time from the mills. And then the diversity feature, I think, is really what helps clear up some of that fog that some individuals within the paper industry have coming out, is that you have so many different routes that you can take in paper mills, whether it be supervisory, whether it be quality, whether it be R&D. There's really something for everybody. There's a flavor out there for everybody, if you will, or if you will. And trying to find that like mentor, like you mentioned, where they can take you under their wing, they can show you what's out there. That's critical piece coming out of school, and I really like that you found that early on. But I think those are two features that we've seen discussed in the past with the paper industry, and I really appreciate you bringing them to light on this call.
Mm-hmm.
So continuing on our path to try and clear that fog at the start of the careers, what are the benefits of programs like the STAR program that Solenis has, where new engineers go through a rotational program coming out of school? And also, what are the key challenges to engineers within these programs?
Yeah, so the STAR program, STAR stands for Sales Technology Applications Rotation. And it's a rotation program designed to prepare young or newly graduated engineers for a successful career in Solenis. And so we started that back in 2014, I guess. And what we decided to do was take the top 10, the high potential engineers coming out of our intern program, and rather than just assign them a location to start working with Solenis and learn what they could from their just direct manager and learn the technologies being used at the mill they happen to be assigned to, we thought having that 1 year in a rotation program where we could expose them to the different technologies that Solenis provides. So it was technical training as well as the networking is just huge, right? We essentially what we wanted to do is jumpstart our young professional careers, right? And not immediately. The idea is we were investing in them so that in 2 to 3 years, they'd be at the same spot previous engineers would have been in maybe 5 or 6 years. So it's not immediate, but the idea is if we build the network, if you get that strong technical foundation, if you learn the tools that Solenis can provide, the company can provide, it's really beneficial. And we've been we really had to balance all those things. There's the technical training, but it's also we focus on the networking, right? Getting to meet different people. It's not just it's intentional, okay, and that's pretty important as well. And that allows these young engineers to kind of develop their own mentors as well, because they get exposed to so many of the leaders of the company early on. So those are all the good things. The key challenges that you asked about, I'd say taking an engineer right out of school and moving them to a new city and then putting them on the road 3 or 4 weeks a month, right? It's hard to establish yourself or meet friends. And that's been, a bit of a challenge. But what we found is when we bring the stars in, and many of them have selected to room together, right? So they have others kind of going through the same experience. And so when they're home on the weekends, they have somebody to hang out with and and do things with, and it's worked out really well.
Yeah, I love that we spent a little bit of time talking about those key challenges, because I think the rotational program is great. Gives you so many opportunities to see so many different mills, so many different topics that you really like fast track your learning in those types of programs. However, you're right. Being on the road all the time and constantly moving spots and wear and tear on people. I do like that you found that your engineers have found a way around that. For individuals that maybe haven't, or maybe a little more concerned about that feature for STAR programs, I encourage you check out our Marcina Rogers perspectives interview. She talks a lot about out of work, that work-life balance. What you do outside of work is just as important as what you do inside of work. Even if you are traveling, make it a point to try and get out in the community, no matter how short of a time you are. Try and meet people, try and go to events, understand where you're at. That's going to be just as useful to your mental well-being as it is when you're out on the road. That's just something that I'd like to throw in there.
Mm-hmm.
So my third and final question, as it relates to the unknown that young professionals encounter, Larry, as they leave their undergraduate degree, revolves around some simple advice from a career paper industry professional such as yourself. So, what are the best continuing educational experiences you could possibly recommend happy young professionals in the first 5 years out of school?
Sure. So a big part of my job is technical training and this continuing education, right? People come out of school with these engineering degrees and they certainly know how to learn and they're curious and they have that foundation, but they don't really have the expertise they need to really add value immediately to our customers' operations, right? And so what we found, it used to be we bring people in for training, come for a week or two, get a 3-inch binder and say, go learn this. And training was measured by how many hours of class they sat, they attended. And that's not really what training's about, right? Training is really about what can you do with that learning. It's not just, hours in a chair. It's I learned something and then I went and I did it. So we've developed a system called TREC, where we evaluate. We have 23 competencies for pulp and paper. Chemical competencies like wet strength or sizing, dry strength, contaminant control, but also just unit operations, stock prep, pulp unit operations, tissue machines, and so on. And so what we try to do is break up these verification activities at a bronze, silver, and gold level: awareness, self-sufficiency, and subject matter experts. And so our training is all about, and our continuing education with our new hires, it's about giving them what they need to be successful, and then measuring, not that they took the training or watched the video, but actually did something with that. And we don't ask people to become experts at everything, right? Rather, we say, you know what, let's get good at the things where you can make a difference now. You have an opportunity to, control a microbiological control system at a mill. Okay, so I need you to get pretty good at biocides, understand how they work, how to measure those systems, how they add value to the process. And so we provide that training so each manager can custom design that continuing education for every individual in the company. It's based on where they started the year, what opportunities are in front of them, and they set a target for where they got to get to. As far as resources for that continuing education, clearly it's go get involved, right? Go volunteer to cover a trial, even if it's not in your area. Just do things, right? And just ask questions. I mean, a lot of the operators, a lot of our senior folks, they really like to teach. They like to share their knowledge. And you just have to get over that intimidation factor that I don't want to ask, because if you're brave enough to ask, there's a lot of benefits there.
Yeah, I like that you point out that it's really about taking those small learnings that you do and then going to apply them. I think a lot of people that come out of school, and myself is probably guilty of this as well, is that you just want to get all the learnings that you possibly can right out of school. You want to see everything, you want to do everything. And a lot of times you'll go to all these trainings, you'll get all these notes, and then these notes go in a notepad, and then that notepad never gets open. You never apply them, and you've forgotten about everything in a week. I think what your approach to it is, again, making a list. Take the top one or two and say, I'm going to learn a lot about these this year. And you go out and you learn all this, you apply it in your job, and those are what's going to stick with you. And that, although you might find that this massive list, you aren't able to accomplish everything in a year, 2, 3, maybe even the first 5. I think that's going to stick with you a lot better than trying to take everything and learn everything right out of the gate. I think that's a pretty tall task.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked our way through the fog, I would like to ask a question as it relates to your ability to think outside the box. Clearly, you're very good at this throughout your career, but with the structured questions and concrete answers that higher education provides, it can be difficult adjusting once in industry, as the questions are much more broad or open-ended, and the answers are almost never clear. How have you been able to train your brain to go against the grain? AKA, what are the tools you use to solve complex problems?
Sure. So I think you're exactly right. In college, freshman chemistry class, you're asked, what's the hydrogen ion concentration of orange juice with a pH of 2.8? And you go look up the formula and you get the answer, right? Whereas now you get into industry and it's like, why am I rejecting the last 2 reels for low sizing? Or why have I used 40% more size, AKD size in order to hit, make on spec paper for the last 12 hours? It's those kind of questions. And there is no book to say, here's the answer, right? And so, but that's actually what I love about wet end chemistry and about the job that I get to do, where you really get to dive into that kind of fishbone diagram of all the possible root causes and try to break it down to things you can measure. And it's very much like being a detective, right? It's like, I've lost the size. Why? Or sizing demand is up. Okay, so you can check the AKD, the feed skid, make sure the chemical's going in, right? Make sure there's dilution water. You can go check the quality test, make sure the test is correct. But then you can also look at what are the things that impact. So get down to the fundamentals of how it works, okay? Sizing is going to go on the high surface area stuff. So I'm going to go look at retention. Oh, okay, I've lost fines retention. Well, what could cause you to lose fines retention? Well, charge. Okay, well, the charge is now much more anionic, which is causing things to repel and lose the charge. Why? And so you keep going through these whys with questions that you can answer, right? They're verifiable questions. And you get down to, okay, the charge is more negative and I'm actually not feeding coagulant, perhaps, or there's some issue with the coagulant feed, and you can translate, right? That it gets all the way through. It's less coagulant feed causes the system to be more anionic. So I've lost fines retention. So the same AKD in the same system is now not providing the same level of sizing. So I need more in order to make on spec paper. So you're right. Those are much broader problems, but those are great problems to solve. And they're really rewarding when you can get in there and fix it and help the mill, get back to kind of centerline conditions. As far as tools, I mentioned that fishbone. There are some statistical tools you can use. You can pull pi tags down and look at Q-sum plots, look for inflection points. What changed 12 hours ago? And all of a sudden you see my coagulant flow dropped. And you say, aha, and then you can be that detective. So I like using, we have an Envoy add-in that we have to help analyze pi data, or we have the digital solutions tool, this optics tool, which really gets at root cause analysis for some of these problems. But even those digital solutions can point you to go look at something, but you still have to understand the process, right? You still have to be enough of a chemical engineer to understand the wet end of the paper machine system, know how things work, and really breaking it down to those fundamentals. But I really enjoy solving problems, and that's the beauty of this job, right? If you're passionate about it, you enjoy it, this isn't work. And when I get to work on a problem like that and get the opportunity to solve it, that's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, I think that what you mentioned, understanding the process as much as you understand the computer software part of it, that is something that people struggle with at the start, trying to balance those two interactions, but also as a young professional with all this information and these massive problems given to you that are fairly complex, what you mentioned, choose things that you can measure to analyze. Don't just say, well, theoretically, what if that happened and this happened? If you can't measure it, there's no way to prove it. So with these massively complex problems, choosing something that you can measure, if you're in a group of individuals steering the conversation that way, I think it's your responsibility to make sure that that occurs. Otherwise, you're just going to be chasing your tail and throwing theories out there that you can't prove. So to end our conversation, Larry, I wish to ask one more question that I have heard many different perspectives of already in my career. What separates a leader from a manager, in your opinion?
Well, all right. My background is a biased answer, but so a manager for me is someone who just manages the process, right? So the process of having people who report to them. So a manager will approve expense reports, will write up annual evaluations. It just managers kind of do the tasks, kind of keep everything moving, and that's important, right? I don't want to downplay that. If you have a manager that or a leader that can't, a manager who can't do that, that's a problem. Okay. But a leader to me is one who motivates and inspires. It's I'll use my athletic background, right? It's the team captain. Okay. The person that can get more out of the group than just the individuals, the person that takes their time to understand all the people on their team, evaluate their strengths and weaknesses, capitalize on their strengths, work with them to improve, shore up their weaknesses, and really help, how best to use the individuals on the team to accomplish the mission, right? To get the job done as effectively as possible, because every leader has a team who's trying to do something, right? And so to clearly understand, to communicate what we're trying to do effectively, and then get the most out of everybody by inspiring them. I mean, again, go back to the athletic analogy. I can remember going to some wrestling tournaments as an individual when I just would enter by myself. I would do okay. But when there was a team event, I could wrestle the same person and probably do better in the team event than if I had that same person draw in a tournament when I was wrestling as an independent, because it was all about the team. It was helping the team win, and I knew I needed to get. I just didn't need to just beat that person. I needed 5 team points. Well, you get the team captain, leader, working with you, inspiring you, talking to you about it, help getting more out of each individual to help the team win. That's what a leader is to me. I just finished reading a book called Extreme Ownership. You may have read it recently yourself, the way you're smiling there. But it's about Navy SEALs, and they break down these different aspects of leadership, and each chapter has 3 parts to it. How they experience it as a Navy SEAL, the concept itself, and then how it applies in industry. And it was an interesting book. I mean, the Navy SEAL part's kind of interesting, but really applying, taking a moment to step back and think about how that applies, how to get the most out of the team, when stuff's on the line. It really makes you think about how you can continue to become an even better leader.
Yeah, what a great book, Larry. Yes, I have read it. In fact, my old mentor, old boss, actually, Mike Sibilia, who has many of the prospective Listeners would remember he was one of our first ones that were on this call. He was the one that introduced it to me as well. And you might think, really, Navy SEALs, how does this apply to the paper industry? Trust me, excellent book if you're trying to figure out how do you own problems, come up with solutions, and work as a team to maximize your impact. But again, what you mentioned is understanding your employees, your team members, knowing their strengths, and not only that, but also understanding how to motivate them. I've actually found, I've enjoyed it when a company asks me to give, a survey of the leadership, and we all rank really what's going on within it. Are we motivated? And in the end, they give you this nice little breakdown of who are motivators, who's maybe struggling, and why is that happening. And oftentimes that leads into, are we effectively managing our people? I think that's something as a young leader people can try and roll out there, maybe propose a survey or something out there where you can get that feedback and understand that, hey, am I effectively managing the individuals that are under me? So once again, listeners, our time has come to an end. I and the Young Professional Division would like to extend our thanks to Larry for sitting down with us today. So thank you very much, Larry. Do you have any last words of advice to our listeners?
Well, and as you mentioned at the beginning, I've had the good fortune to be involved in TAPI since I started in the industry back with IP up in Erie. And it's at first, it was a little intimidating. As a young professional, you go to one of these technical sessions and you may not understand everything and you don't know the people. And it seems like everybody else knows everybody. And so it's a little intimidating at first, but if you kind of fight through that, or brave enough to sit down next to somebody and ask some questions, go to a committee meeting, get involved, all of a sudden you realize how powerful TAPI can be at helping you be successful in our industry. I mean, as you mentioned, I've had the good fortune of being involved on the committees, working at the division level. I'm one of the instructors for the wet end chemistry class. So I get to see people who come to that class and get to talk about those same sizing problems like we talked about earlier. I work with Lisa on the student summit, and it's just all the different ways TAPI kind of connects with the industry. You really feel part. You mentioned that family earlier, just within the mill or within your team. There's actually a broader family in the pulp paper industry. And you go to these annual PaperCon conferences, and it's like seeing family. I mean, you go up and you get to see people you haven't seen in a year, talk to them, and it just makes working in this industry a little bit better. And so that my advice would be for young professionals, go ahead and get involved. Take that risk, take that chance, sign up to attend a conference and get involved. Don't just go and sit in the back and hope it's going to wash over you. It's like the training we talked about earlier, right? Just spending an hour in a chair doesn't mean you're going to learn it. But going to the conference and getting engaged and being a part of it, that's where you're really going to get the value. And there's a lot of value that TAPI can provide, and engagement and all the different parts of TAPI. So that'd be the advice. Go get involved.
Well, thank you again, Larry, for that advice. And also, I think everyone on the call will know this. Again, happy birthday to you.
Yeah.
We certainly hope that everyone found this discussion to be useful. And please check out more Perspectives content by visiting the TAPI Young Professional website and clicking on the YP Perspectives link. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to see all of you again soon.